The Cold War defined a global struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, pitting democracy against communism and capitalism against socialism in a decades-long rivalry. This video covers the evolving strategy of containment, from the Truman Doctrine to flexible response, and examines the impact of the Vietnam War on American foreign policy. Before the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviet relationship was complex. After an initial non-aggression pact between Stalin and Hitler in 1939, Hitler betrayed the Soviet Union in 1941, leading the USSR to join the Allied powers. Following World War II, the United States emerged as a dominant global power. Diplomat George F. Kennan advocated for a realist foreign policy to maintain this influence through a strategy of containment. In contrast, the Soviet Union faced extreme devastation after the war, yet it remained a significant rival, projecting power across Eastern Europe and challenging American hegemony. Historical distrust between the two nations ran deep, fueled by the late U.S. recognition of the Soviet government, Western military intervention in the Russian Civil War, and fundamental ideological differences. The Soviets also held deep suspicions of the West, driven by disagreements over the division of Europe, U.S. use of economic aid as leverage, and the strategic implications of the American atomic bomb. The division of Europe created the Iron Curtain, as the Soviet Union established buffer zones across Eastern nations, leading to Western fears of aggressive expansionism. The economic ruin left by the war made the Soviet Union vulnerable. U.S. leaders recognized this, often utilizing financial aid as a diplomatic tool to exert influence during the post-war Reconstruction period. President Truman leveraged U.S. economic strength to shape the post-war order, denying Soviet requests for aid while directing substantial loans to Britain to solidify Western alliances. The loss of the U.S. nuclear monopoly due to espionage accelerated the move toward a formal strategy of containment, as the Soviet Union successfully tested its own bomb in 1949. The Truman Doctrine became the foundation of containment. When civil war erupted in Greece in 1947, Truman mobilized public and congressional support by framing the conflict as a critical challenge to democracy. U.S. aid to Greece marked a turning point in containment strategy, setting the stage for future global proxy conflicts and deepening the division between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the U.S. refined its Cold War approach, balancing budget concerns with a policy of massive nuclear retaliation and the use of covert CIA operations. This era saw a massive expansion of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. The reality of mutually assured destruction became a central feature of global politics, profoundly influencing culture and society during the 1960s. During the Eisenhower era, the CIA shifted from basic intelligence gathering to active global covert operations, intervening in foreign political affairs to secure U.S.-friendly regimes. Key examples of this new approach include the 1953 coup in Iran, known as Operation Ajax, which overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and reinstalled the Shah to protect Western oil interests. Similar tactics were applied in 1954 to overthrow President Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala, and later, the strategy informed the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba in 1961. As Eisenhower left office, he issued a warning to the nation regarding the rise of the military-industrial complex, fearing that excessive defense spending could threaten American liberty and democratic institutions. Eisenhower emphasized that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry could properly manage the complex relationship between the military, industry, and the country's peaceful goals. Under President John F. Kennedy, the U.S. adopted a strategy of flexible response, moving away from the rigid doctrine of mutually assured destruction toward more versatile options. This new approach involved diversifying force capabilities, including the development of ICBMs, the creation of elite units like the Green Berets, and an increased capacity for direct military intervention. This commitment to a more flexible, interventionist defense doctrine would eventually become a primary catalyst leading the United States into the Vietnam War. The origins of the Vietnam conflict trace back to the struggle for independence from French colonial rule, which lasted from 1946 until 1954 and resulted in a divided nation. Following the division, North Vietnam emerged under communist control, aligned with the Soviet and Chinese blocs, while the South remained under a separate, non-communist administration backed by Western allies. France fought significantly to retain its Indo-Chinese territories of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia after World War II, viewing them as highly valued colonial assets. The First Indochina War broke out in 1945. Despite massive American financial backing to support the French, their forces suffered a decisive defeat at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. The 1954 Geneva Accords temporarily divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel. Ho Chi Minh led the Communist North, while Ngo Dinh Diem became the American-backed leader in the South. Stability remained elusive as both sides consolidated power. The North enforced land reform through violent campaigns, while Diem's repression in the South, particularly against the Buddhist majority, eroded his support. By the 1960s, opposition grew, leading to the formation of the National Liberation Front, or Viet Cong, and eventually a military coup that ended with the death of Ngo Dinh Diem in 1963. Following the assassination of President Diem, the situation in South Vietnam deteriorated, leading President Lyndon B. Johnson to escalate American involvement to prevent a communist takeover. The Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964 provided the political impetus for direct U.S. combat operations, resulting in the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which granted Johnson broad powers to wage war. As American troop levels surged, the war became a primary feature of global Cold War strategy, with the U.S. fighting to maintain the credibility of its containment policy in Southeast Asia. The Tet Offensive of 1968, though a military defeat for the North, shattered the American public's perception of the war, triggering massive domestic protests and political turmoil. The war eventually ended for the United States with the Paris Peace Accords in 1973, leading to the withdrawal of U.S. troops and the eventual collapse of South Vietnam in 1975. Reflecting on the Cold War, the struggle shaped decades of foreign policy, defined alliances like NATO, and left a complex legacy of ideological competition and proxy conflict across the globe. The ideological struggle between the U.S. and the USSR was not limited to regional wars, but influenced every aspect of global politics, as both superpowers sought to secure their influence through various strategic methods. Major strategies employed during this period included brinkmanship, espionage, foreign aid, the formation of military alliances, extensive propaganda, and the fighting of surrogate or proxy wars. For the United States, the post-war goal was to promote open markets to prevent another economic depression and to foster democratic institutions, particularly in developing nations across Asia and Africa. The U.S. strategy was driven by the fear of a domino effect, the belief that if one nation fell to communism, its neighbors would inevitably follow, threatening global stability. The Soviet Union's goals centered on security. Having suffered immense losses during World War II, the USSR sought to establish defensible borders and ensure only friendly governments existed on its periphery. Winston Churchill famously captured the growing tension in his 1946 Iron Curtain speech, describing how Soviet influence and control had descended across Central and Eastern Europe. In 1947, the Truman Doctrine emerged as a core response to communist threats, pledging that the U.S. would support free nations resisting subjection by armed minorities or outside pressure. Complementing this was the Marshall Plan, a massive economic initiative designed to rebuild European nations, which effectively countered communist appeal by fostering prosperity and economic integration with the West. The Eisenhower Doctrine later extended these principles to the Middle East in 1957, authorizing military action to defend against communist-backed threats in a region critical to global stability.